All right, as part of the Victorian government's litany of woke reforms, they're set to decriminalise public drunkenness this Tuesday. Wouldn't you know it, just in time for the Melbourne Cup. Instead of people being arrested, they'll be picked up if they're too drunk and taken to so-called sobering up centres. However, as revealed in the Herald Sun this morning, 9 out of the 10 sobering up centres will be exclusively for Aboriginal Victorians. Paul, I'm not sure I agree with this whole thing anyway, but I've got to ask you, why is it 1% of the population have 90% of the sobering up centres? What is that about?
Well, I mean, it's ludicrous. I mean, obviously Victoria is trying to do all that it can to push down everything from incarceration rates, all the rest of it, right? So that's why you get this push on about age of criminal responsibility, right? Perfect example, the ACT. Where the ACT says age of criminal responsibility goes up to 14, therefore you can't be charged until you're 14 for committing a crime. But if you want to change your gender, you can make that decision at 12. So our society at times is absolutely fighting against itself in logic. I think the public drunkenness stuff, there's the libertarian part of me that says, hey, man, you do what you do, you know, keep to yourself. But then there's the other part that says, well, hang on, how often do we have conversations about domestic violence and how Australia needs to deal with something? What are one of the factors that can end up leading to that when people are full of it, right? How does a society make sure that the streets remain safe? Well, you make sure that people are in an unaltered state while they're walking around on them, right? How do you maintain a police service? Well, when somebody goes and actually intersects somebody who they believe to be committing a violent act, they go to court, they get charged, they get punished. Well, guess what? When they don't get punished and they don't get charged, the police officer eventually becomes disillusioned. We're starting to see a certain theme that's appearing around tonight's show, where it's all well and good that voters who want to get on the cans and have no plans to have a swing will get away with a great Tuesday. But if one person gets whacked on Tuesday because the person knows they can get as full as they want and no one will get in their way, well, that's on the collective state. But of course, there's nothing to say.
Right, while we're in Victoria, let me give you another example of wokeness from that state. The Melbourne City Council has decided to prioritise prominent women and Indigenous names when renaming streets and places. Any proposal to name a street or landmark that doesn't match that criteria would need to go back to council and be voted on. Erin, are you a fan of this?
Oh, I'm still too annoyed about the previous story. I'm still too annoyed about and sorry, and I know you want to move on, and okay. I'll very quickly, and then someone else can, who cares, whatever. You're so right about the domestic violence aspect. 10 women in 7 days have lost their life, and one of the biggest issues women face, and it's not a stereotype, it is true, men go out, get drunk, go home, do their thing. That's it. One of the reasons men don't go out and get completely hammered is because there are consequences for their actions generally. They know that there's got to be, to a certain extent, their ability to still make decisions, walk, etc., etc. You take the consequences away, and like that is utterly ridiculous.
Let me just make this one point to that, though. Men also get drunk and kill men. There are more men that die.
100%.
Like, I'm not saying women aren't vulnerable,
but hit. Look at Thomas Kelly. Absolutely, right. Every day of the week. But the issue of domestic violence is so significant right now. We've got ministers for the prevention of domestic violence in Sydney who have not spoken to Karen Webb, the New South Wales Police Commissioner,
what about that?
7 months. Like, is anyone going to take this issue seriously at all? And what Victoria is saying, here's one other little thing we can do to make it a tiny bit easier.
Well, let alone
we forgot, though.
Get off your face on ice.
To be honest, I think the real story here is that Indigenous people are so overrepresented in the public drunkenness numbers that there is this kind of massive bias towards the sort of facilities that they think they need to provide for them after this law.
But is it true or not? That's the question.
Oh, we absolutely definitely know.
No one's allowed to ask that question though, because then you're
this
racist.
This has actually been one of the really big problems, and you would know this from your experience on the ground as a police officer. But we know from the stats, and there is no doubt about it, that Indigenous people are vastly overrepresented when it comes to drug and alcohol issues, and indeed when it comes to domestic violence. And frankly, the trendy inner city social media left has decried, as you say, anyone who even raises that point as a racist or whatever, saying, "Oh no, it happens everywhere. It happens everywhere." Well, you might say that car crashes happen everywhere, but if they're happening 10 times the rate at one intersection, that's where you're going to put the traffic light, isn't it? Yeah. So, and this is something that I've tried to raise many, many times over the years, and again, always been shouted down by the trendy inner city social media left. But it has just blown up in their face something deluxe because, of course, when it came time for a mechanism to try to address this disadvantage and a voice to Parliament that wasn't just window dressing, thing wasn't just virtue signalling in the Constitution, but a practical mechanism that suddenly the left all wanted, there wasn't actually a case on their own side that could be made, because they'd been saying, oh, no, it's no worse there than anywhere else.
Yeah.
And even if it is, it's all your fault because of racism.
Yeah.
And so there's, again, this is what happens when we bury these issues. And I think the Victorian, there's no better example of the inner city left taking over a state than the state of Victoria. That actually just shows that, again, they've completely and utterly failed to deal with Indigenous disadvantage
The
in
other
their own
crazy
state.
thing about this story is if you want someone to take you to a sobering up centre, you dial 000. So that's going to be
So that takes the top of the screen. Anyway, but it's okay.
They're going to give you a lift as well.